Hello everyone, and welcome back to the old hunt. We are picking up sort of where we left off last time, in the end of a Chalice dungeon. This is the end of the very first story Chalice dungeon. I figured I'd come here for some visual continuity. I have actually been farming blood vials in between episodes, which is why I say sort of. It's a little bit of a qualifier. There has been a little bit of stuff happening off camera that you have not necessarily been aware of. Also, if you are joining us again after a break, if you saw the first episode where I was going into the Chalice dungeons and said, forget it, I'll come back later, it's good to have you back. We are now through the first Chalice dungeon, and we're going to pick up some pieces. We've got a lot of sort of things lying around that I want to check in on, and this is going to be a little bit of an interstitial episode as we shift gears back to the main game. So first off, let's go back to the dream. Okay, we are settled back here in the dream, and I'm going to need probably more than 120 blood echoes. Let's use one of these level 3 cold bloods. There we go, 1,000. That'll probably handle what I'd like to do. What I'd like to do is upgrade. I'm going to switch weapons again. We're going to get that hunter axe out of there and replace it with the Kirkhammer. Yes, we've been building towards being able to use it for a long time. Now we're finally going to use it. Let's see if we can indeed get it up to level 3, or rather to +3. There it is. Perfect. Beautiful. And let's go ahead and raid our other weapon for gems. We should have some better gems now that we have been through the Chalice dungeons. 34 is pretty good. Seeing a 45 for blunt. Interesting. I wonder how much of the Kirkhammer's attacks are considered blunt. It's got two forms. It's got the hammer form and the sword form. I'd be pretty surprised if the hammer form was not considered blunt. Let's try it. Let's try specializing in blunt attacks. I think that could be fun. Make use of an interesting sort of unique property of this weapon. And meanwhile, go up to, so +50 on blunt, still +35 when it's not, which is not too shabby, all things considered. So here we are. We have our Kirkhammer set up for the next little portion of the run here. And I'm now going to go back. We're going to tie up some loose ends. I'm going to return to Old Yharnam. And before that, in the process, we're going to talk to Alfred. I've been putting it off for too long. It's time to correct that mistake. All right, where is Old Yharnam? Here it is. I will warp to the Old Yharnam entrance. You know, it might have been faster to go from Central Yharnam, but oh well, we're here. I did it. I have no regrets. Yeah, okay, the portable lantern's on. Cool. We're gonna ascend up. Oh, and this is something that I was thinking about. I was drawing parallels before. I'm going to get my blunt attack in action here. I was drawing parallels before about Old Yharnam and the state of its beasts and everything with, what's it called? Oops, I thought I would dodge in a different way. Clearly, I was not prepared for that. So that's a pretty quick strike there. Is that faster in startup? That's relatively a quick swing there, and it's also wide. That's good to know. Anyway, I was drawing parallels between the Chalice dungeons and Old Yharnam before, sort of speculating we've got one on top of the other, Old Yharnam, New Yharnam, and we've got one on top of the other, Chalice dungeon, Chalice dungeon, Chalice dungeon, right? Well, how do we get to Old Yharnam? We come through a tombstone. How do we get to the chalices? Well, they're the tomb of the gods, right? We go through tombs. I did not have to bother with this guy at all, but I'm getting used to the slower pace of this giant hammer, which is definitely going to be an adjustment after the speed of the saw cleaver. But that's okay. Can deal with that. Maybe Alfred will approve of our clerical choice of weapon here. Yep. I see the bullet. I see the dogs. I'm just gonna run. I'm just gonna run. Oh, wait in here. For the dogs to come. Haha, they missed. What's my lunging R1? Interesting. It's like an overhead hammer swing. Also reasonably fast. Definitely faster than the regular R... Ooh, that was interesting. Huh. Interesting, like, variation on that quick-step R1 thing. But anyway... Alfred, what do you think of this new hammer I've got here?
Oh, good to see you safe. Now, let's think up something to discuss. Just tell me what piques your interest.
You know, I've been meaning to ask you about Byrgenwerth.
Byrgenwerth is an old place of learning, and the Tomb of the Gods, carved out below Yharnam, should be familiar to every hunter. Well, once a group of young Byrgenwerth scholars discovered a holy medium deep within the tomb. This led to the founding of the Healing Church and the establishment of blood healing. In this sense, everything sacred in Yharnam can be traced back to Byrgenwerth. But today, the college lies deep within a tangled wood, abandoned and decrepit. And furthermore, the Healing Church has declared Byrgenwerth forbidden ground. It's unclear how many of its scholars remain alive, but only they know the password that allows passage through the gate.
All right. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
I bid you farewell. It has been a pleasure. May the good blood guide your way.
Thanks, Alfred. Very handy information there. So, very important information as well. I talked before about how his second dialogue throws more at you. I think it's a little bit easier to take in now that we have gone through the chalices, because he references the Tomb of the Gods, which should be familiar to every hunter, right? The implication is that every hunter, and Gehrman sort of implies this as well, every hunter leading up to, before us, heed the message of your forebears, right? All this idea of partaking communion. What does he mean by partaking communion? He means go into the chalice dungeons. Every hunter before you has. And Alfred is sort of verifying, yeah, every hunter should know about the Tomb of the Gods. Also, this is, I think, probably where we are technically supposed to learn that the Tomb of the Gods, which are the chalice dungeons, which are the underground labyrinth, they're all deep below Yharnam. So Alfred's giving us that confirmation if we didn't have it already. I think I was confused about that in an earlier Chalice episode. So, I mean, it just tells you, like, Alfred's information is highly critical to our understanding of the game. There's probably other places you can verify it, but Alfred is one crucial source, especially this early in the game, that will tell us that, yeah, the Tomb of the Gods, that's the same as the underground labyrinth, that's the same as the chalice dungeons. They're all deep underneath Yharnam. And he tells us that the Healing Church, right, is tied to the origins of this place called Byrgenwerth. They were exploring the same place. So stuff that was going on beforehand, right, you have these scholars from Byrgenwerth who start descending into the labyrinth, and they come back with Seitai, right? It's the holy body. It's the holy substance, as I was sort of talking about before. And this is really the thing in Alfred's second dialogue that I think is something of a brain bender. It is for me anyway. But I really like the way the translators have approached and handled it. So I want to come at this from the idea that, talking about the holy substance, what is the holy substance, right? It's like the substance of communion, right? And what is the substance of communion? Well, in the real world, the substance of communion is the body and blood of Jesus Christ, according to the Catholic Church. And so, but obviously this isn't the Catholic Church. We know that. Father Gascoigne, right? There's no title of father in the Healing Church. So it's its own sort of thing, right? There are these things that are analogous to gods in the world of Bloodborne. We'll definitely learn more about them. And you go down into the Tomb of the Gods, right? It's one of the many names, very indicative. One of the many names for the underground labyrinth is the Tomb of the Gods. So you go into the Tomb of the Gods. They went down into the Tomb of the Gods, and they came back with the body and blood for, like, in a communion sense, all right, the substance of communion. And again, like, what do you do when you go to the chalice dungeons? You partake of communion. That's how they tell you to go to the chalices. So it's all wrapped up in this idea of communion, of going down and like coming back, and they come up with a substance. Now, what is that substance? Again, and I've talked about this before in my first chalice dungeon episode. It's a little bit fuzzy. There's a little bit, because in Japanese, the word for communion is actually something of a phrase, right? Seitai Haidio. And it's got two parts, right? There's Seitai, which is the holy substance, the holy body. And then there's Haidio, which is the humble reception of that thing. So there's a way in which Alfred he doesn't say literally communion. He says they go into the tomb of the gods and they find a holy substance. But the tie to communion is very strong, because what does it mean to go into the holy chalice, into the chalice dungeons? It's to partake in communion, right? Let that blood be the hunter's nourishment. The blood that you find down in the chalice dungeon should be the hunter's nourishment. I mean, that's sort of indicative, right? But at the same time, the idea, it leaves open there's this fuzzy possibility that they go down, they come back with the body and blood of a creature analogous to a god, maybe, because that's what the substance of communion is, if we're thinking analogous to the real world. Or is it just something that allows for humanity to approach the things that they consider on the level of gods, the great ones, right? It's this sort of very fuzzy, nebulous concept that's tied to the act of communion, but isn't necessarily 100% linked to it, might be doing something of a play going on there. Also, Alfred, he's deliberately being vague, right? He doesn't say it's blood. He doesn't say it's bread. He doesn't say it's body. He doesn't say it's wine. He doesn't say it's any of that stuff. He says it's like a holy substance, a holy body. And that might have overtones. Maybe it's the heavenly host. Maybe it's what exactly is it? It's unclear. So part of the point of the translation is that it should be somewhat vague. And the translators went with holy medium, right? The scholars went down, they discovered a holy medium deep within the tomb. And they brought it back to the surface. I don't know, I don't remember that part of the English translation. The Japanese, they go down, they find this holy substance, and they come back with it to the surface. And then that leads to the healing church. And we also know that the holy medium of the healing church is venerated in the main cathedral. Yet another reason to go to the Grand Cathedral, right? We need to see what's venerated there. And there are sort of a few different ways that you could interpret what's being said there, both in Japanese and in English. Linguistically, the Japanese is maybe even a little bit more open than the English. I think Last Protagonist puts this point better than I do, but if you think a lot about the lore and all the different sort of interconnections, I think there is a little bit of a push towards the idea of it being the blood, no matter what language you're talking about, because like I said, the first time I was talking about the idea of a holy medium, we have the best medium ever in blood, right? I mean, even the ritual blood that we use to access the chalices talks about everything, blood melts everything, and then from there, everything is reborn. Blood is capable of carrying everything within itself, right? It is the ultimate medium, right? So, I don't know, make of that what you will. Again, I find this something of a brain bender. I find it difficult to talk about. I do think that the idea of a holy medium is about as good of a translation as you could get for that Seitai right there, with all the different ways that it's supposed to be potentially working. I think it's really well done. But anyway, that's enough on Alfred's speech. Let's do something a little bit more mechanically focused now, and not forget about the person who's going to fire a gun at me, and go back to Old Yharnam, because I also need to pick up the rifle spear. I noticed that when I was editing a previous episode, and I don't want to leave that weapon just lying there. Actually, I had a comment from someone who was indicating that because I'm playing 1.00, there's like a bug in the implementation of the rifle spear that allows certain gems. Oh, great. Am I going to die? Incredible. Survive all that nonsense coming up and almost die to one dog and a hunter. Amazing. Yep, that's me. You got me. Oh, man. I am not used to having such a slow attack. Oh, I got the job done. I'm tempted to not heal, but I have to. I have to heal up because I have something of a dangerous run to make if I want to get back to that house with the rifle spear. But we'll get there. Anyway, I was saying that a commenter had informed me that in this version of the game, the rifle spear, there's something of a bug where if you get a boost to arcane, a flat arcane damage boost from a blood gem, you can use the rifle spear. You can put it on the rifle spear, and it will give that flat arcane damage boost to every single bullet it fires. And I've never used the rifle spear, but presumably it fires several bullets, and therefore the damage quickly gets out of hand. Alright. So that quick strike from L2, you know, quote-unquote quick strike, this whole weapon is slow. Does it combo into or out of anything? No, it doesn't. So R1 doesn't combo into it. R1 also doesn't really combo out of it. I guess the other quick thing is that strike, right? That's maybe the fastest attack that I have. Alright, I need to be running, though. I'm trying to figure this weapon out on the fly. I did do a playthrough at one point using the Kirk hammer. Can I do this? Yes! Ha! I did it right for once. Let's not take 1 billion points of damage as I fall down here. Excellent. But that playthrough I did with the Kirk hammer, I basically ended up... it doesn't combo. I don't like that. I don't have like a good set combo with it. But I basically ended up using it in its smaller like sword form all the time. And I mean, made for fun playthrough, right? Because it's a nice, fairly fast, like, agile weapon. But I don't think I'm getting, first of all, in this particular gem setup, I don't think I'm getting much benefit from that extra boost to my blunt damage. And for another thing, not really taking full advantage of what the Kirk hammer can do. So, how's the transformation attack work? Okay, I'm not hugely thrilled with the transformation attack. What if I transform into it? Okay, that's also quite slow, isn't it? Might as well just use an R1. Nope. So even my quick step here wasn't fast enough to outperform the enemy's attack. They can attack faster than me. Gotta keep that in mind. A light tap of L2 is pretty good here. What about a light tap of R2? Nah, it's very slow. It's powerful, but it's very, very slow. The charged R2, I remember. That's the one thing that sort of... You have the most opportunity to set those up, and it's the biggest attack on this weapon. So if you're good at finding opportunities, particularly against regular enemies, to fully charge it, wha-bam! Isn't that great? It's awesome. See? It's fast enough to dodge away from me. I think actually the R1's the fastest attack, which makes sense. That's what it should be. But, interesting. I did not want a blood gem. I wanted a blood vial, but that's okay. Am I going to miss the rifle spear again? I've done it again, haven't I? Here it is. Anyway, eventually I think it'll be fun to get that arcane bullet bug working and have a little bit of jolly old time cheesing my way through some part of the game. But it takes a little bit to get the arcane gems that I would need to get it working. So probably won't be very soon, probably not in the near future. Anyway, I think I'm going to warp back to the dream because I don't want to lose any more blood vials on my way out of Old Yharnam. I will see you there. All right, we are back. We are able to take stock of things. Another interstitial thing that I wanted to mention, we got the decorative item, right? Here they are. So we have this Messenger's Bloody Head Bandage, something like that. Let's see. Attire? I think that's just like costume or attire for the misunderstanding messengers. The messengers who've misunderstood, right? They, very literal phrasing there, but the idea is that the messengers don't understand the significance of this item, and they're using it as a form of like fashion, a form of clothing. Okay, this is, they're doing like an impersonation. They're copying the look, for some reason, of the bandaged appearance of a sufferer of the plague of beasts. And it includes the blood. The teine ni chi made tsuiteru, right? Like, teine ni is like, it got even down to the little intricate details of the blood, right? It's a very sort of, like, if you're talking about the intricate little details of someone's costume, right? Or the intricate little details of a paint job that you're putting on something, right? It has that sort of connotation to it. It's very playful in its, like the idea that this is a, just a fashion accessory, and someone's gone in and very carefully paid attention to the detail that, oh, people who suffer from the plague of beasts, they have bloody bandages, so I've not overlooked that little detail, right? I've put in that level of detailed work to recreate that look as a sort of fun little thing that I'm doing. And the final portion, this final section here, is telling us how it sort of functions in the game. The messengers that lurk in the hollow of the stump, which we've been to several times, right? The place that up until now there have never been any messengers, despite it being connected to the nightmare. The messengers that are dwell within there appear to have an interest in adornment. Or I'm remembering the official translation, but the Soulshoku down there is the exact same thing as the one at the end of the first line, right? They have an interest in attire and costuming. This is sort of like the messengers cosplaying people who have suffered from the plague of beasts. And as they are no more, as it is no more than child's play, why not be indulgent and allow them to have some fun, is the sort of spirit of that final line there. I think the official translation is like, why not let them be happy and revel as babes, or something like that. Absolutely in line with the spirit of that final thing. This is a playful take on the horrors of Yharnam. And let's go and see that in action. Come on. And Gehrman won't be over there. I was tempted to go check, but first of all, here they are. I was tempted to go check because sometimes you can just find him hanging out in the garden. But then I remembered he wouldn't be there because he's waiting for us very patiently to come talk to him and tell us where to go next. Okay, so by handing over adornments to the messengers, your messengers will put on that adornment. Very literal, but still. The idea is you hand over your thing here, and now I have a menu option. So I can have them not wear any adornment, or I can have them wear the Bloody Messenger head bandage. And there they are. There's their, like, old Yharnam cosplay. There's the item. This is, by the way, the item that I was jumping and jumping and jumping off that one ledge for in the old Yharnam church. So this is them having fun and putting on the image of the bloodied head bandages of someone suffering from the plague of beasts. So, yeah, I mean, it's on the one hand, it's pretty dark. On the other hand, it's pretty funny. Like, the other items that are in this series are a little bit less, I don't know, in poor taste. I don't know if, I mean, taste depends, right? So maybe it's not poor. Maybe it's just, you think it's funny. I find that one to be a little extreme, making light of the people going around in head bandages. Though I do think it's funny, the idea that the messengers literally have no idea about what's going on with that. It's kind of a fun little thing there. Anyway, I think we put it off enough. We've taken care of all the stuff that I left behind in the various Chalice explorations, all the stuff I've been putting off. Let's talk to Gehrman one more time here and find out where he thinks we should go next.
The healing church and the blood ministers who belong to it were once guardians of the hunters in the times of the hunter Ludwig. They worked and forged weapons in their unique workshop. Today, most ministers don't recall the hunters, but they have much to offer you. And so, heed the message of your forebears. Ascend to Oedon Chapel.
Okay, so there's a good amount of information to take in there, but the key thing from a translation perspective is, as much as the voiced lines, like I've said before, are more likely to be in line with what the developers were thinking in terms of their translations, this is an example of how even those voiced lines aren't necessarily perfect, because I think we're going to get it again if I talk to him one more time. We're going to see that Gehrman's Japanese subtitle is just the Japanese for Oedon Chapel, right? Oedon Kyokai. O, and O is a direct object marker, so it's identifying Oedon Chapel as the subject of the action that we're supposed to take. And then it's the verb, agaru? No, that's too simple. It's ascend, right? We'll get it again in a second here. But it's very clearly in the Japanese subtitle saying ascend Oedon Chapel itself. And I think my suspicion is the translators didn't know the layout of the world of Bloodborne, even when they were doing the voice lines. Or if they got some input from the developers, maybe even the developers weren't sure what the layout was going to be. I've heard, for instance, that a lot of the early stuff in Bloodborne was like planned to start in Hemwick or something. We haven't even been there yet. But apparently very early versions of the game were like maybe set to start there. And they sort of changed it and rearranged it and moved things around. So either the communication was good, but the developers ended up changing locations and changed the subtitle for the Japanese, or the translators just didn't understand how the world of the game was going to be laid out, and therefore thought ascending to Oedon Chapel from the Tomb of Oedon was the proper idea. But actually, if you look at the Japanese, we should be going up Oedon Chapel itself. That's what Gehrman's really telling us to do here. Let's get confirmation of that by talking to him one more time.
Ascend to Oedon Chapel. From there, you will find the church workshop.
Yeah, Nobori Tamae. Okay. It was Noboru, not Agaru. That makes sense. Anyway, if you speak Japanese, that makes sense. Let's see. What was I going to... Oh, yeah, I was going to show... He says, ascend Oedon Chapel. There you'll find the Healing Church Workshop. Remember, we had another hint on this item. But it's not coincidence that this is the episode that I decided to switch to the Kirkhammers, because the final two lines of the Japanese version of the Kirkhammer tell us that there are two schools in the creation of trick weapons, the Hunter's trick weapons. One of them is this workshop. The other one is the Healing Church Workshop. And the Healing Church Workshop is hidden away somewhere, or existing quietly somewhere in the Cathedral Ward. Well, Gehrman's just told us that Oedon Chapel in the Cathedral Ward, if we go up it, we will be able to find the Healing Church Workshop. So that's what we are eventually going to do. Let's come over here. Let's go to Central Yharnam. No, not... Yes. No, not Central Yharnam. I'm losing my mind. Cathedral Ward. I was just explaining why Cathedral Ward is the important... Anyway, let's go there. And here we are in the Cathedral Ward. And as you can see, the messengers over here too, like these appear to be some of the messengers or related to some of the messengers that are at the stump. They now have the adornment of the bloody head bandage on. Also, I remembered while I was staring at the Bloodborne loading screen that there's another interesting thing about Gehrman's dialogue I wanted to comment on. He calls out that in the time of the hunter Ludwig, the church hunters were the guardians of the hunters. And that's just an interesting idea to me, and also one that I think is worth diving into in editing, because there are a couple interesting ideas tied to it that require a bit more nuance than gameplay Matt can muster. First, there's the translation of the term guardian itself. The Japanese word used in the subtitles is higosha, and the interesting thing here is that while it can mean guardian, it can also mean supporter or mentor. If that last term sounded a little out of place to you, well, it did to me too, so I looked up the definition in Japanese. Normally, my source for such definitions is Digital Daijisen, but in this case, the term isn't listed there, so I've turned to the Jitsuyo Nihongo Hyogen Jiten, which translates to something like the practical Japanese expression reference. Here, a higosha is described as a person who defends, protects, or supports someone, sometimes used interchangeably with terms like patron or sponsor. What's more, higgle by itself can be used to refer to the protection or guardianship of a parent or some other authority. So when Gehrman says the blood ministers were once guardians of the hunters, I get the impression from the Japanese that he's more saying they provided patronage and support to them, rather than physical protection, though that may have been part of it too. Anyway, the other interesting idea I think we can get from the Japanese subtitles is a more complicated sense for how things have fallen apart between the church and the workshop hunters. That's because if we look at a literal version of Gehrman's subtitles, we can see that he says this relationship has been in place since the time of the old hunter Ludwig. This not only confirms Ludwig as an old hunter, it also highlights how in Gehrman's mind this relationship should be ongoing. Now, I can see why the translators might avoid this wording, since Gehrman also admits later on that most of the blood ministers appear to have forgotten the hunters. So even in Japanese, it's clear that things are no longer what they were back in Ludwig's day. But I do think it's interesting to consider how Gehrman views this connection as one that should still exist, even though it's on the verge of being forgotten. As we'll see, he has his own ties to the Healing Church, which may also be shaping his ideas of the ministers providing support to the hunters. Hey Gameplay Matt, what do you make of that? I don't know, maybe Gehrman's full of himself in that regard, maybe not. We're going to learn a little bit more about that, not much, but a little bit more about the old relationships there as we go through the game. Also, something I want to point out before we make too much progress. Let's see, oh, hello there. Do not want to forget about you. Be very slow, there we go. There's another use of the rally system. These strength weapons, this one and the Hunter Axe, if you can get to the point where an enemy isn't going to interrupt your attack, and it's a big one like that, you're just going to recover all that HP. Beautiful. Anyway, the thing that I wanted to point out by coming out here is there's an enemy over here, and that particular enemy did not used to be here. And if I knew what I was doing, if I was a better player of this game, I would have set up, I would have come here beforehand and established that indeed there was no enemy over there. Oops, that's what I was waiting for. Oh no. Okay, well, this enemy moves real slow too, so maybe I can get away with some really slow strikes. No! He interrupted my big hit! This enemy's really scary. Maybe Molotovs just is the way to go here. Getting a little low on them, but that's fine. That's fine. 100% okay. But that enemy was not always there. It is a recent arrival, and if I had been more of a professional lore streamer or something, I would have shown off that ahead of time. Indeed, that enemy was not there, and now they are. You're just going to have to take my word for it, I suppose. But it's one of the sort of many... There are big changes to the time state of the world, where we go from, like, afternoon to evening to eventually we'll get to night, right? There are big, like, major phase changes in the state of the world that happen as you play the game and beat various bosses. There are also relatively minor ones, such as that enemy didn't used to be there, and now it is. And right now... Oh, this is something I can actively point out. As of this particular moment, there is no one over here by this bench, this tree, this particular side of the Oedon Chapel. There's nobody here. That's going to change. So that's another sort of small thing about the state of the world that's different. Also, these doors used to be shut, and that's something else that I can verify because I don't think I deliberately showed it off, but I've definitely been in this Oedon Chapel while these doors were shut. So we can now see that they're open, and you know, there's various explanations for how this might have happened, right? Maybe that enemy that we saw sort of opened these doors on their way through over here. I've heard that as a theory. There is, of course, just the reality that this is a video game, and so we beat a boss, we made progress, and now we have a new path. That's how games work. And then, of course, there's the idea that this world right here is a dream, and because we have changed something about the state of it, in one sense, another thing about the state of it has changed, and Gehrman's advice is sort of tied to this, because we can't go up, we can't ascend Oedon Chapel if we don't have access to this elevator. So that's what we need to be doing. But it's been a fairly decent length, and I feel like if I go up that particular elevator, we're going to be at it for a good long while before it's going to be another reasonable breakpoint. So I think this has been a very interstitial episode, but I think this is a good point to call it. And I will, I hope you've enjoyed the episode. I will continue to be playing the game. I've been having fun doing so. I'm going to call an end to my hunt for the evening, and I wish you good hunting.